We join our heroes as they board one of the 3 vessels bound for Emeraude, forming part of Sir Francis Duck's expedition. They have chosen to board the ship known as the Spirit of Ambition.
And we chose that ship purely based on the name, and not based on the captain, whom we saw the first time when we boarded the ship with our belongings on our little troop of mercenaries. Did we call ourselves the Order of St. Gale? Or the Knights of St. Gale?
Yes, you did call yourself the Knights of St. Gale.
Yep. So that's who we are now, Big Mick. We are the Knights of St. Gale, and we're signed up to the Spirit of Ambition under the command of a captain who will be lynched immediately when there's a there's any sign of discontent with the crew.
Yeah. It quickly becomes obvious to the heroes that this expedition is a hastily put together and urgent one. With the number of able sailors killed by the plague rising and few being available, pretty much anyone who has turned up and expressed an interest has been pressed into service, resulting in a ramshackle group of peasants, nobles, layabouts, and pretty much anyone else who is still capable of sailing and is unaffected by the plague. Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So we have a ship full of brigands is the thing.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Now, to explain a bit about the captain of your vessel, as mentioned by Johannes, it's a man called Captain Farrington, and he's a very, I suppose, almost like a sort of flamboyant, like cavalier type. He's quite dramatic, you know. He says things like "Let us sail for glory" and things like that, and he always seems to have like one leg up on like a barrel when he's like talking. The first mate of the vessel is an altogether more pragmatic man by the name of Cartwright, who's obviously an old hand on ships. He's been put in charge of making sure everything's ship shape and everyone does their job, because no one's a passenger on this voyage, as you'll have heard him say a few times. But he's strictly like, no nonsense, we've got a job to do, let's get it dealt with. And you'll notice during the sort of like the first day or two of your voyage that most of the crew tend to sort of go to him if they've got an issue, rather than going to the captain. Jackdaw and Big Mick adapt pretty quickly to the conditions at sea, whereas Friar Dunstan and Lieutenant Uffington seem to be having a little more trouble. The infantry that they have hired are okay, Sergeant Fallows keeping them in line, and Gregor, the muscle-bound Slavic warrior, gives no sign of discomfort. Although he's not exactly chatty, his strength is useful for pulling in lines, getting the sails down, lifting barrels, etc. He doesn't really.
He's
ask
a
any
pretty
questions.
sort of. I imagine him to be a fairly grim sort of bloke.
He is, yeah.
Kind of. Yeah.
He definitely has this sort of like brooding air about him. Now, part of that could be the fact that he doesn't speak much Havenlander, so he can't really just sort of like introduce himself or like get to know people very easily. But also, like I say, he's like over 6 foot tall and wears like dark plate armor and looks like, and he's built like a sort of bodybuilder, so he's fairly intimidating. So a lot of people give him quite a wide berth anyway.
Understandable.
So let's get started with the first day. Now, I'm going to be trying something I've not tried before. I'm actually using a hex flower. It's the in the Heart of the Sea, which I think is produced by Goblin's Henchman. So,
Nice.
as the small fleet heads out of the Thames Water estuary and into the Havenland channels, the crew is slightly on edge since they're sailing perilously close to Gaulish waters. The word goes out from Cartwright, the first mate, that people should report anything suspicious and keep a weather eye open for any sign of Gaulish sails or pirates on the horizon. Big Mick and Jackdaw are both stood on deck. They can see heavy pendulous clouds in the distance and the odd flash of lightning. The waves are monstrously high and the wind buffets their vessel, rocking it alarmingly. Snow begins to fall and there is a cold chill in the winter air. Men are having to be sent up regularly to knock the snow off the rigging and off the sails to to keep the ship going, and constant sort of adjustments are having to be made to the sails because of the sort of changeable direction of the winds. The ships are forced to take the journey around the coastline of the Havenlands somewhat more slowly due to the stormy conditions. However, despite that, and some fairly skillful sailing from the people on board, salt water is soon slopping onto the decks, which causes everyone to get very damp and very cold. It's thoroughly unpleasant. The clothes you're wearing are soon soaked through. There's a little bit of encrustment from the salt spray coming out of the water. It's a thoroughly unpleasant experience, and within like the first sort of couple of hours of your shift, you're soaked through almost to the bone. Your teeth are chattering. Everyone's getting a little bit grumpy, a little bit miserable. You hear a few people on board mutter that perhaps the curse of the plague has followed these vessels, and maybe you even hear a few people say, "Oh, I know I shouldn't have signed up for this. Look at this. We've barely made it out of the estuary, and already we're starting to run into trouble." And there's a few sort of murmurs of discontent already starting to go through the people on board.
That don't bode well.
Nothing outright mutinous yet, and you can see that the first mate, Cartwright, is trying to sort of keep people's spirits up, and in fact he authorises an extra barrel of rum to be broken out, and sort of like a small cup of it to be served to each man on deck, just to warm them up and to raise people's spirits, which does work a little, although people are obviously still not happy, and like I say, it's a thoroughly unpleasant experience.
So I would like to, as Cartwright is tending to this problem, after the sort of he's put up his distractions, I would like to try and take him to the side a bit to have a chat.
Yeah, that's fine. He's just passed a small cup of rum to one of the men, and he's basically put the sort of barrel open on the deck, and he's like pretty much help yourself.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, so yeah.
Right. Although you do hear him warn a couple of people. He's like help yourselves, but Gale'll help you if I find you like derelict in your duty or like sleeping it off.
Don't go silly.
Yeah, exactly. You get in the impression as he talks. I mean, you've heard him sort of telling people this, mate. You get in the impression that he's like a stern man, but he's like a fair man, and he's obviously like, I can appreciate that these guys are having a terrible time, and I want to do something to alleviate that. But also, I know we've got to keep the ship running. So it seems like he's got a good like square head on his shoulders. But you sort of gesture him over Jackdaw, and he walks over and he actually gives you one of these little like wooden mugs with some rum in it, and he's sort of holding one of those like waders hats on his head against the heavy winds, and he shouts at you over the storm. He's like, how are you bearing up?
I'll accept the rum mug and cover it with my hand, because there's probably quite a bit of stuff flying around. So I'll cover it, and I'll, as best as I can with my wrecked throat, I'll shout back. I'm fine, but some of these others maybe not. And I just wanted to let you know that if it comes to it, I recognize that we need pairs of hands to make this boat go. But if we need to make an example, I know how to do it.
He looks at you, and he's sort of like still holding his hat on, and he nods grimly, and he says yes. He says more than 3/4 of this crew have never sailed a vessel in their life, but they're all I could get on such short notice. We wouldn't be having this trouble with able seamen, but with so many dead or dying from the plague.
Yeah, just to, well, you keep an eye on the situation. I will do so as well, and we'll compare notes. Some days forward, but
He nods and he points off into the distance. You can see like this heavy, pendulous bank of black clouds with the odd flash of lightning in them. And he says, "I don't like the look of that storm dead ahead of us." He says, "But well, if we were to try and go round it, we'd be sailing into Gaulish waters."
well, if it matters at all, I speak Gaul. So, if we want to try and dodge the storm, which way, like is the storm stationary or is it moving? Do we know?
The storm is around about here.
Yeah.
And it seems to be slowly sort of drifting in this direction.
Yeah. So it's basically stall and wait for it to pass or go slightly towards Gaul.
With the choice of waiting for the storm to pass or sailing around it into Gaulish waters being their only options, Jackdaw offers to translate should they come across any Gauls. However, the first mate doesn't seem very keen on that.
We can parlay.
He says, "Well, I'm not sure there'll be much need for translating." He says, "They're wily devils, those Gaulish, barbarous pirates, the lot of them."
Jackdaw takes his rum and moves over towards the group of people who've been muttering superstitions about the plague. Meanwhile, Big Mick is performing his duties on deck.
Now, Mick, whilst you're working, you can, as you sort of glance back, you can see at the far end of the deck, you can see Jackdaw talking to the first mate. And as you're sort of glancing out over this stormy, tempest-tossed sea, with this storm threatening to rage in the distance, you think you spot small, lighter shapes just sort of swimming along under the surface of the water, sort of in the wake of the ship. Small sort of grey or silvery shapes. It's difficult to tell with the waves crashing in and you having to wipe the salt spray out of your eyes.
Could I get a closer look?
Okay, I'm going to say you could get a closer. You can get a closer look. You will need to make me a dex roll because effectively, like, you're going to have to lean out over the edge to get a closer look, which obviously is risky while you're on a boat that's going up and down. But you're fairly dexterous. You can sort of hold on to the side where you lean over. It's entirely down to you. Obviously, if you fail badly, you might overbalance and go overboard.
Okay, I'll go and have a look.
Okay, so make a D20 roll. It's
not very good.
as you're leaning over the side of the boat, you see what appears to be 3 figures emerging out of the water and climbing up the side of the boat. As you look at them, you can see they appear to be some sort of blasphemous amalgamation of shark and man. They have grey, warty skin, a humanoid body, and like a shark-like head with a fin coming off their back. You can see that the first one that's emerged from the water, he has what looks to be a rusty, salt-pitted dagger clamped between his sort of sharp, shark-like teeth. Just as you're sort of leaning out, unfortunately because of your failed roll, you lean out a bit too far and you knock a bucket over the side. It tumbles end over end before and disappearing in the water. It goes straight past this shark man and he looks up and his soulless black eyes meet yours.
3 of the sharkmen carrying daggers between their teeth quickly scale the side of the ship and are just about to pull themselves over when Big Mick begins to act.
Okay, well, I'll call out, "Oi, we're under attack! There's some gnarly shark men climbing up the side of the boat!"
Jackdaw, you hear Big Mick bellowing, "We're under attack," and you can see him sort of leant over the side, looking down. From where you are, if you sort of lean over, which is a free action, it's just a flavour, you can see these 3 shark men climbing up the side. You see the people on deck. There are 9 people on deck at the moment. Not including any sort of named NPCs, just 9 sort of seamen, basically. They're not really... You guys are pretty well equipped in terms of weapons. Most people didn't rock up kitted for a small war like you guys did. But most people carry a dagger or a knife on them or something, just for general duties. So you see people grabbing their knives 4 of the people rush below deck, presumably planning to get more help, or they start rushing below deck to get more help, or presumably to get more weapons. Obviously, the sort of cannons that are on your ship aren't going to be much use here, but you see at least 5 of the people on deck, not including Jackdaw, are sort of drawing their daggers and obviously like getting ready to head over in your direction, Mick. But they were sort of caught a bit on the hop, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move round to the next. Do you want to do anything else? Obviously, talking's a free action. So
yeah, well, I poke at one of them with my gladius if they're like stabbed down at them as the nearest one.
That is absolutely fine. Like I said, one of them is just below the lip on the side of the deck, so you could easily stab at him with your gladius. As you, despite the fact obviously you've not, obviously you're looking after your weapon, but sort of being at sea with all the salt spray and everything, it's not ideal for items made of metal, which can sometimes cause problems with weapons being stored at sea. However, despite that, when you draw this gladius out of its sheath, it slides out easily as though it had been like oiled an hour or so earlier, and it's just like a slight sort of hissing noise as you slide it out. You can see the acid etched depiction of some sort of ancient, you think perhaps pagan deity, Goman deity, you're not really sure, etched on it.
Very fancy.
Okay.
Stab him.
Ooh. Okay.
A 10.
Okay, you go to stab at this shark man. He avoids your blow. However, to avoid your blow, because obviously he can't really go anywhere, he has to basically let go of the side and like drop back into the water. There's a loud splash. So although he's not dead and he can try and climb back up later on, for the moment, he's at least going to have to try and climb back up.
Yeah, good enough.
Okay. So we move on to the next round.
So if I take a quick peek over the side just to like see where one of these things is, and if this is just my pitch to you, if where I peek over isn't directly in front of the shark man, would you find it credible for me to get my bearded axe, which is like slung over my shoulder with the axe blade on the other side? I just unhook it from my shoulder, and having like seen where the sharkman is coming, just like lean over with the axe over the edge and just sneak attack the dude in the face as they're trying to get over.
I am absolutely fine with this. However, in a similar fashion to Big Mick leaning over, you're obviously having to extend yourself a great deal to do this. So if you get like a natural 1 or like a really abysmal attack roll, you may overbalance and go over the edge.
Because this is entirely possible that I hit the side of the ship and they just go yoink and
But you can certainly make that attempt, so make your attack roll.
Okay, here we go. Let me get the rules for this.
In a trivial aside, I've been playing D&D since the beginning of the 80s, right? And I've never really encountered sharks. Okay? Yet, last evening, had a big fight with a were shark, and then this evening, yet more sharks.
Why
2 nights in a row?
What are these rolls? Like, the ones with the most bonuses that I set up are always, like, below 10.
Lame.
Yep. Yeah. Well, like I say, Colin, to all things there are a season, and this would appear to be the season of the shark.
Yes, it would.
So, Johannes, can you please make me a dex roll? The difficulty is 15. You can add your level.
Well, of course not.
Okay, so are you?
This happened last time.
Yep.
So, Mick. Yeah. Jackdaw runs up to like obviously swing his axe as he's running across. However, at the last minute, he slips on a sort of iced over patch of the deck. He flies over the side of the ship, and a few moments later, you hear a.
Oh, man overboard! Man overboard! I sound the alarm and toss him a line. Throw him out a line from Presumably they've got something for such eventualities on board, have they?
So as you shout that, I'm going to say you see 3 of the remaining NPCs, sort of sailors, on board of the deck, start sort of like grabbing a rope and like roping it around each other and getting ready to throw it over the side. But obviously that's going to occupy them. However, now we come to the NPCs. So the 2 remaining shark people haul themselves onto the deck next to you, Big Mick.
Okay.
So I'm going to make an attack roll for them. What's your AC, Mick?
10.
Okay, and luckily for you, almost unaccountably, both of them miss. So these 2 shark men, they've obviously only just pulled themselves up over the side. They take a couple of swipes at you, but you sort of back up a couple of steps, and they're not able to sink their sort of like short swords into you. Over to you, Mick.
Right, I will return the favour and stab at the closest one, rolling an 18.
That's absolutely fine. Roll your damage. Okay.
2 damage.
Okay, so you swing your gladius towards this shark, and as you're swinging it, you're like, oh shit, I've overextended myself. That's just going to like nick his arm. Then as you swing your sword, it's almost as though the sword itself like changes the angle of the blade, and it actually cuts very deeply into his arm. And you see like the sword almost doesn't seem, you don't feel any resistance on the blade as it slices through his flesh, and you see a deep wound opens in this shark man's arm, and this sort of dark red, almost black, watery blood starts pulsing out of this deep wound you've inflicted on him.
Gladius of shark slaying.
Indeed.
Nice.
Okay, Jackdaw, you're obviously in the drink, and as you're sort of like struggling up to the surface, as you're underwater, you see like a dark shape moving towards you. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, in addition to whatever action you make, can you make me a strength roll, please? Is strength a primary attribute for you?
It is secondary. I rolled 18 though.
Okay, however, yeah, an 18 is good enough. So at the moment, you're sort of managing to tread water, and you've just sort of got your head above water, and you're still holding onto your axe and all your shiz at the minute. However, you can tell that like this stuff's going to eventually drag you down.
His assassin reflex is kicking in. Jackdaw sinks his axe into the side of the nearby ship, and using it as a lever, begins to climb up the side of the boat.
However, as we move on to the NPCs go, that shark man is going to attack you, and I'm going to say that if he hits you, you will then need to make a strength check to like hold on while you're being damaged. But let's see if he hits you first. What's your AC, Jackdaw?
It is... Well, I don't have my shield now, so it's 13.
Okay, I'll make a roll for him. Okay, he leaps at you but misjudges it a bit, and he actually, as you're sort of climbing up, he lands just under where you are, so he's now climbing up the side of the ship after you, but you've not been damaged, so you are grand. You've got another 2 rounds and then you'll be back on the ship.
Yep.
Okay, so the 2 that are on board the deck, I'm going to say one of them is going to attack Mick, and one of them is just going to attack one of the other sort of NPCs who's running across to help Big Mick. You know, there's a couple of them. Like 3 of them are still sort of running across with a rope to like lower down to Jackdaw, not realising that actually he's doing pretty damn well himself. But 2 of them have run over to where you are, Mick, with their daggers. They make a couple of swipes at these shark men, but they're obviously not skilled combatants, so these shark men like easily parry their blows or just like knock them aside. Okay, so the shark man, one of them like leaps forward, so like his head almost like jutting out a little bit, and he bites into the chest of one of these sailors. You see his shark-like teeth sink in. Then he pulls his head back, and just like this part of the sailor's chest is just gone. It's just a bloody ruin. The sailor topples back to the deck, doesn't even have time to utter a death rattle. His eyes roll back into his head, and he flops lifelessly back to the deck with a dull thump.
Jeez.
Okay, the next one taking an attack, a swipe at you, Mick, misses you, so you're still good. So how are you responding, Mick?
Oh, well, I guess he goes to bite at me, I duck round him and then I stuff him in the gills or something like that. Oof, or not so much.
Okay, you stab at the shark with your gladius. However, the shark man blocks it with his own sword. There's a brief shower of sparks as your blades grind against each other, and you sort of like force him back, but you don't manage to do him any actual damage. Okay, Jackdaw, you can hear the sounds of fighting above you over the storm. You hear the sounds of steel clashing on steel. So like glancing down, you can see this grinning, fanged maw of this sharkman climbing up after you. Looking up ahead, you can see people moving just on the deck, but obviously there's the lip in the way, so you can't really tell exactly what's going on. What do you do?
I briefly consider just like dropping down on the sharkman and trying to just like stab it in the face as we fall into the drink, but then I consider it's not going to be hampered by being in the sea, and I am. So I like reeling back from this murder fantasy, I continue my climb.
That is absolutely fine. You continue to climb up. The shark man is climbing up after you. Obviously, he can't draw his weapon to attack you because he's having to hold on.
Yeah.
So the two of you just move closer to the deck. You've got one more round of climbing, and you'll be able to just pull yourself over onto the deck at the end of the next round. So we come on to the NPCs. Another 3 sailors have run out onto the deck, and as they're carrying short swords, they've obviously been alerted and they've grabbed weapons. As you're sort of like climbing up Jackdaw, you hear a sort of an inarticulate like "Hooray!" from above you, and you see a man holding a rope, and he like throws it down. It like unwinds next to you, sort of falls down next to you. You can see him sort of holding it and bracing himself against the side, and you just make out maybe another man or 2 behind him, sort of like bracing him. Okay, so we now have 2 sharkmen. The one who's just killed a sailor is going to attack another random sailor. Okay, so as you're climbing Jackdaw, up above you, this sharkman stabs his short sword into the chest of one of the sailors. And before this guy's even had time to register that he's been stabbed, with these bulging grey muscles, he just lifts this man up over his head, like holding up the sword, and just heaves him over the side of the ship. You see this sort of sailor trailing a spray of blood plummet down past you, Jackdaw, into the drink, and you see briefly you see him sinking below the waves, and then he's lost to sight. Okay, you take 3 hit points of damage, Big Mick. As the one standing next to you with his short sword scores a cut across your chest. You feel cold as the blade slices through your clothing and into your chest. You feel a momentary warmth and dampness as your blood leaks down under your chest.
Boo.
How do you respond?
Stab him.
Okay.
An angry scowl on my face, yeah. 13.
Okay, that is a hit. Roll your damage.
Boom.
Okay, so describe how you dispatch this creature.
I reckon he sort of bites into me, and when he's got hold of me, he's close enough, and I kind of wrestle him a bit and just jab, because the gladius is good for that short, that close quarters combat. I just ram it into where I approximate his kidneys are, and sort of waggle it about. And
You
make some sort of butchery type manoeuvre.
Indeed, you've seen many animals slaughtered it back in Slaughter Ward. So you stab it in where you think like the vitals of such a hideous creature might be, and you almost sort of dissect him pretty much with your gladius. Like I say, there's no resistance as you move the blade through his flesh. The grinning mouth, the sharp-toothed mouth of this shark man gapes open for a minute in shock. Then his legs buckle underneath him and he falls to his knees, then face forward onto the deck with a loud thump. You hear a from the other shark man, who turns around to face you, obviously now realising that you're by far the deadliest threat in this area.
That's not saying a lot, is it?
They haven't seen Gregor yet. He's in the background just like ripping sharks in half.
Okay, Jackdaw.
So the one that was tossed overboard wasn't the one with the rope.
No.
Yeah. So grab the rope.
Yeah.
And make way and.
Okay, so what I'm going to say is slightly out of turn, but I'm going to say that as soon as you grab the rope, these NPCs are going to actually haul you up rather than waiting for you to climb up. So I'm going to say you actually get onto the deck in this round, sort of like rather than at the end of the round, so you can still take like a small action, obviously within limits. But these three men like haul you back onto the deck, and as you sort of dive up there, you're just in time to see this shark man collapse onto the deck, slain by Big Mick and his gladius of his shark slaying, and you can see this other shark man sort of rising to his full height, no longer hunched over, and you can see that these things, although they're slightly hunched, if they sort of stood up fully, they must easily be about sort of like 8 feet tall.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's huge.
Almost 2 people.
Yeah, pretty much.
Stacked on top of
And like I
each
say, this one who's obviously seen Mick, and he's almost doing like a sort of threat display. He's like risen up to his full height, these bulging grey muscles, the fins sticking up. He's like.
Do they have any weapons of their own?
They appear to have short swords.
Yeah. Sorry, we kind of left that without mention. Did I manage to get my axe up, or is it in the sea? Okay, so they haul me up. I get the axe and look down. There's the guy climbing up still, presumably, and then the one that's puffing his chest at Mick. Was that?
Yeah, that's correct.
How it was? Yeah. So, not paying attention, I'm gonna come from the back if I'm at the back and try and get it in the. Well, I guess because it's huge, in the back of the knee with the axe.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. They're AC 13.
Yep. This isn't gonna be a sneak attack anymore, but it is coming from the back, and I think that's +2. So here we go. So I basically slide. Yeah, that's gonna be the thing, because I learned my lesson. If I run, I'm gonna fall overboard. So I do like a rock star slide on my knees on the frozen surface of the deck and try and chop it in the back of the knee. So here goes. Come on, no. It's one of those episodes.
Okay, you do your sort of like rock star slide towards him. Unfortunately, you've misjudged how slippery the deck's got over the last few minutes, all the extra water and the blood, etc. And you actually like slide a bit past him. So sort of as you sort of go like that, you've already sort of slid past him a little bit, and you're having to sort of go like that to try and stop yourself like sort of falling on your arse, basically.
Yeah. Just basically, I slammed the butt of the axe into the deck to like.
Yep.
As brakes.
That is absolutely fine. And as you do that, there is a loud and you see the nearby sort of door that heads below deck is kicked open, and you see a huge figure emerge wearing like half plate mail, holding like a two-handed sword, and you see the scowling face of Gregor. and your sergeant both sort of like hustling out of the door. The sergeant's holding like a normal sort of short sword. Gregor's got this like huge two-handed sword. He looks around and the two of them start running over to where this Sharkman is, and they'll be there on the NPC's next turn. Okay, so the Sharkman is going to attack Jackdaw because you're now nearest, because you've just slid past him a little bit. Okay. You take 2 hit points of damage as he's sort of still holding his short sword and facing towards Big Mick. As you slide past him, he literally, with these claws, sort of rakes down the side of your face as you slide past him, still keeping his dark, soulless eyes on Big Mick.
Yeah, he just gives me the, like, go away now, minion. You're a henchman.
And speaking of Big Mick, it's over to you.
Yeah, I just stab, fighting for my life.
Okay, it's AC 13. You have hit.
Yeah.
Roll your damage.
Oh,
Okay. Okay, you swing at him and you're like, oh, I've swung too far. It's going to miss him or just hit him. But the sword actually appears to like turn itself, and as you sort of like you go past your shoulder, the sword turns and slices into the side of the Sharkman and scores quite a deep wound on him.
this is a cool weapon.
The wound's enough that this Sharkman sort of like staggers back a little bit. He's now holding his side. This sort of bile like black blood dripping out as he clutches his side with one hand and holds his sword with the other. Okay, Jackdaw, you've just taken this rake across the side of your face. You've managed to stop yourself, but you're still on your knees holding this bearded axe. The Sharkman sort of staggered back a little bit as Mix stabbed his sword of shark slaying into him.
So we're quite close now. So I will stand up and I'll do a lunge with the axe, like use the axe as a weight. So I'll like spin it around a couple of times and just like let it lead me forwards with the forward swing, and I'll basically fly at this shark man and try and hit it with the axe.
Go for it.
Come on. One hit would be nice. Oh, that's -2 because I didn't take off the.
It's still a hit. 13 is a hit.
Right.
So
Cool.
roll your damage.
So, I don't have the bonuses there. Cool. So, 5.
Okay, describe how you dispatch this foul shark man.
Well, I was basically doing like a tiger leap at him with like using the axe as a weight. So I spin it around myself like 2 rounds and then leap forwards, and I just fly against him. He's still standing, right? So
Yes.
big guy. I collide with his chest. Yeah, maybe I hit him with the axe, but he like staggers back, slips, falls. Head hits the mast, and there's this like, and it's at a very wrong angle, and I'm laying on top of him in like just a mess, and I'm trying to dislodge my axe from the chest.
Okay, and that is exactly what happens. As you're sort of trying to dislodge this thing, Gregor and your sergeant Thomas Fallow sort of get level with you. Gregor heaves this sharkman's corpse off you, and the sergeant offers you a hand, Jackdaw.
Yep.
Gregor and Sergeant Fallow help Jackdaw to his feet. The remaining Sharkman swims away from the boat, the element of surprise now gone.
Mickey, you okay?
Well, I took a bit of a hit, but I've never seen the likes of this nonsense before. Walking fish? What is the meaning of this?
Obviously, as you're having this conversation, a number of the other sort of sailors have now sort of like emerge on deck. You can see that the first mate is also on deck. Cartwright, as he hears you say this, I've never heard of this nonsense before.
Yeah.
Big Mick Cartwright says, he says, yes, he says, these things, they're a menace in these colder waters, particularly in the winter time. They prey on ships here to the south coast.
Where they come from then? Bleeding menace, all right.
He says, well, if you listen to the superstitions of sailors, he says, the way they tell it, there's men who stay at sea for too long without seeing land sometimes turn savage and feral, and those that go over too far, those that eat the flesh of their own, end up like that. And he like kicks one of these dead shark men's body with his boot. I don't place any store in it myself. I reckon they're just another kind of creature. And he points down at the water and says, after all, who knows what's lurking down there in the deeps? Could be anything.
I'd rather not dwell on that, if I'm honest.
As Big Mick is talking to the first mate, Jackdaw takes his knives out and uses them to remove the shark's jawbone from the strange creature. Gregor watches him do this and says,
Jadolson broskits.
I pause in my work and I look at him and I give him the universal of like, Qua.
He points down at the body and then over the side of the boat, and he says, Jadolson broskitsito.
I've got there's like a pile of teeth there, and then the detached bloody jaw, which I've set to the side, and I motion towards the body and then to the sea, and I look at him as if a question mark.
Chuck it.
He nods.
Yeah, I nod at him, and I'll get like one leg, and I'll motion for him to get the arms.
He nods, and between the two of you, you manhandle this shark man body to the side and heave it over into the tempest-tossed waters, where it sinks like a stone.
Yeah.
The first mate, Cartwright, suggests that Jackdaw and Big Mick go below deck to rest, and he'll have the men take care of the bodies of the two unfortunately deceased sailors. As they're nodding in agreement, there is a loud slam as the door of the captain's cabin flies open. You see this flamboyant figure with this like large hat on with a feather coming out of it, sort of brightly polished buckles on his like suit, like little sort of thin rapier on his side, like crushed velvet, the works. As Captain Farrington storms out,
frilly cuffs, cuffs.
He like flounces out on the deck and he's like, Cartwright, what is the meaning of all this noise? Have we run aground, man? Which one, Cartwright? No, sir. Just a couple of interlopers, but these lads here have dealt with it. He said, what do you mean, interlopers, Cartwright? He says, sharkmen, sir, sharkmen. He's like, don't be ridiculous, Cartwright. Those are just sailors' tales, nothing more.
I would like to flip him like a coin, one of the bloody shark teeth that I took from the upper jaw of the dude. Just like, ping!
He catches it in a gloved hand, and Captain Farrington looks at it. You see him go like a little bit pale, and he says, well, get the sails out, men. If these waters are infested with these creatures, we can't be hanging around here. After all, we have a mission from Queen and Country. And he sort of rests one leg slightly raised on the little ladder that he's come down.
I just roll my eyes, blow hard.
You notice as he's doing this, like a few of the other sailors who gathered on the deck, like a few of which, like the three who pulled the rope up to you, have probably like taken like minor injuries and sort of rope burns and stuff like that. You can see a few of them sort of like muttering and like grumbling as it's obviously like a foppish man who's just sort of like, he's basically been here for like none of the graft. He's pretty much turned up and gone, oh, these people don't exist. You've proved it, and now he's like, oh well, we best move along then. And a little like ripple of discontent goes amongst the people who are on deck. You see Cartwright looking around. He's obviously clocked that like people aren't happy, and you hear Cartwright say, "Yes, I'll get straight to that, sir. Perhaps you should head back into your cabin and consult the charts to make sure we're heading in the right direction. So, he's like, yes, damn fine idea, Cartwright. Damn fine idea. We don't want to go astray in these waters, not with Gaulish pirates and whatnot. Although I'd like to get my hands on those Gaulish dogs. I'd give them a right good seeing to. And he sort of swishes his rapier out, and sort of figure of eights it in front of him. At this point, Cartwright's like, yes, I'm sure you would, sir, but we really need you to look at those charts. Yes, Cartwright, the charts, of course. Work hard, men, work hard. And he turns around and sort of flounces back into his cabin, and the door slams behind him.
Relieved that the captain's no longer on deck, First Mate Cartwright starts giving orders to the men and tells Jackdaw and Big Mick to get below deck and get some rest.
I believe the phrase is aye aye.
We'll make a sailor of you yet, Mr. Michael.
Big Mick and Jackdaw head below deck, where they manage to make a small amount of space for themselves to sleep in the cramped conditions. Before going to sleep, Jackdaw uses a small pot to boil the meat off the bones of the shark teeth trophies that he has taken, and they both slowly drift off to sleep in the cramped hold of the vessel.
As the night heads on, just you're going to sleep, you notice that the storm does appear to have moved off inland, and the wind's starting to die down to more manageable levels. There was a lot of talk the previous day that they couldn't have the sails fully unfurled because the wind would effectively tear them to pieces. It was too strong. But you can hear people like unfurling the sails to the full now. You can feel the ship starting to gain speed as you're sort of heading to sleep, and you hear the sort of patter of the snow slowly start dying away during the course of the night, and then you both drift off into a fairly sort of troubled sleep, but sleep nonetheless. Now, as you're sleeping, Big Mick, you start to dream. And in your dream, you're back in your younger days in Slaughter Ward, when you were still a young lad, like helping your dad out with the deliveries, when he was a bit more mobile and he was a bit more involved in the day-to-day business. Before all the unpleasantness with your sister Penny, before she started having these like strange visions. She'd always been a bit touched, as your family called it, but it started getting worse sort of later on. And as you dream, your mind drifts back to the days just before she started getting really strange, and you remember that she used to have a friend that she used to play with called Martha, a young girl who you had a little bit of a crush on in your youth. She was a lovely young girl who was like really Penny's only friend, and it was only after Martha mysteriously disappeared that Penny really started to get these visions heavily and started to become more and more strange, as though whatever sort of calming influence Martha had placed on her, once it was removed, it sort of opened the floodgates. However, in your dream, you're both playing by the river, Penny, yourself, and Martha. However, in your dream, Martha looks very different to how you remember her looking in real life. She always looked pretty to you, but in your dream, she is absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. She has long blonde hair, the colour of the sun, pale skin, and deep blue eyes, like the colour of the sea outside. In your dream, although yourself and Penny are sort of clad in, like your normal sort of workaday clothes, the clothes of Martha seem lighter. They almost seem to like sparkle in the sunlight as droplets of water fall, and as you're sort of like playing around in the river, like the shallows, as children do. As you're playing around, you notice that whenever Penny's not looking, Martha's gaze seems to like linger on you a little bit, Mick. Although, as you recall back in them days, Little Mick.
It's a bit odd. She never used to sort of pay too much heed to me in reality, I suspect.
You know, she was always kind to you. Like I say, you had a bit of a crush on her, but like it never really developed into anything. You were both just young kids, really. I mean, maybe you missed the signs when you were younger. Obviously, you know a lot more about that sort of thing now. And it was just sort of like a childish thing. It wasn't really anything like serious. But in this dream, occasionally as you sort of, as Penny's like splashing around in the shallows, you catch at the corner of your eye sight of Martha looking at you with these deep blue eyes and a hint of a sad smile playing about her beautiful face.
And what happened to her in reality? She went.
You don't know. She just disappeared. Another one of the many people in Great London one of the poor people who just vanished, and nothing was ever found out about it. I mean, you know that as is unfortunately the case in Great London, if you're rich and you have influence and something happens to you, the peakers and every man and his dog get involved. If you're just a poor person, not so much.
And there weren't any rumours or anything like that at the time?
No, not that you're aware. I mean, people always said she was a little bit odd, and that's how she sort of originally started getting on with Penny, because Penny was always a little bit touched, as your family called it, and that's their sort of shared strangeness drew the two of them together. And you, by default, being sort of Penny's protected brother, you got to know her a little bit as well.
And did I know any of Martha's family or anything?
Unfortunately, she was an orphan. Is there anything in the dream, in the clothing? Was there anything familiar about her garb? No, it's strange, but as you're sort of looking at her and you're sort of trying to figure out what's different about her clothing and what differs between this dream version of Martha and your real life memories of her, as is often the case in dreams where scenes change almost without transition, they just change as you think about them. As you're sort of looking at her clothing, you're suddenly aware that you and Martha are no longer by the river. The splashing fades into the background, and you're both stood in what appears to be a small forest clearing. There is thick snow on the ground. Martha with her golden hair hanging down her shoulders, although looking a good deal older now, sort of like the age you are now, but still looking almost painfully beautiful, is stood in front of you, and she's wearing this long white dress that appears to have this strange sort of shimmer to it in the moonlight.
And I don't recognise this place as a place. I don't imagine I was in the woods or anything much as a kid.
No, not at all.
This could be a sign of things to come. A vision.
She leans towards you in a sort of breathy voice. And as you look down at yourself, you realise that you're now no longer a child. You're yourself as you are now in modern day. She takes your hands in her own and sort of like curls your hands up into fists and wraps her hands around them, and then she says, "You will find it for me, won't you?"
I'll try and reply in my dream,
Feel free to act as you wish.
Yeah. Find what, Martha? What do you task me to find?
She smiles at you and she says, "It's the only way. It's the only way." And she opens up your hands, and as she does so, you can see what appears to be a small, precious-looking ring sitting in your hand, a golden ring.
A ring. Well, yeah, I'll do what I can. Is there another ring like this, or?
She says, "Yes, I gave it to a person who mattered to me more than life itself, and who was taken from me."
Oh, I see. Well, where would I mean, where do you think this ring is? Can you? I mean, if you could tell me more, I could perhaps stand a better chance of finding it.
Okay, so Jackdaw, you've sort of been awake for a little while, and you can hear Big Mick sort of rolling around on the sack he's sleeping on top of, and you hear him going, "No, where's this ring? If you tell me where it is, maybe I can find it."
I will make a note of that, but I'll leave it to be, and probably get back to using the point of one of my knives to drill a hole at the very end of the jawbone to make a string necklace out of it, so you can hang it on your neck.
That's absolutely fine. Okay, the figure of Martha reaches out towards you in the dream, Big Mick, and she opens her mouth as though to say something, but instead of words coming out, you hear a loud clanging bell. And
I'll reach out back to her, try and reach back. Martha, don't go.
You reach back to her, but it's as though she's being pulled back, and the scenery is retreating away from you.
No, this time has been too brief.
She turns towards you, and just before she disappears into the darkness that's gathering in your faded dream, she blows a kiss towards you, and then she's swallowed up by the blackness, and you wake up to the sound of one of the sailors on deck ringing the bell to signal the change of watch. You can see Jackdaw sort of working with his knives on these bones and teeth that he's got.
As I come to, I'll just be like, "I'll get your ring, Martha, I'll get your ring," and then realise where I am. Oh no, not on the stinking ship.
So that's what you
Take
hear,
me
Jackdaw,
back
as he
to
wakes
Martha.
up.
Take me back to the woods and lovely Martha.
Are you all right there, Mick?
I was. I was quite fine.
Mick tells Jackdaw all about his dream. Jackdaw offers Mick some of the dream weed that they got of the Queen's apothecary, but Mick refuses, saying it's never as good once you go back, and Jackdaw packs away the pungent herbs.
Yep.
She had a fine looking ring though in the dream, I tell you. Wants me to get her ring back.
So where's the ring gone?
Well, it's just gone. She gave it to somebody she cared about. Apparently, so. Yeah.
And we don't know who this person was.
Just some important geezer that meant a lot to her.
When it comes round to your watch in the morning, you head up onto the deck. Like I say, you've all recovered a hit point. You head up onto the deck, and there's quite a lot of commotion from the sailors. And as you look out, you can see that obviously during the night, with the storm covering the stars, etc., your ship has gone far further south than it was supposed to the point where you can just see sort of the Brilliance and the Victory and the coast of Havenland in the distance. Far closer, as you look off the other side of the vessel, is the shores of Gorlandia. You appear to have drifted into Gaulish waters.
Luckily for the crew of the Spirit of Ambition, the rest of the day passes uneventfully. Aside from a small two-man rowing vessel, they do not encounter any problems with Gaulish pirates or corsairs, and their navigator is soon able to get them back on track. They've fallen somewhat behind the main fleet, but begin to catch up.
Okay, as you continue travelling, you're heading. You see that the Victory and the Brilliance have obviously pulled far ahead of you. You're lagging a little behind. As you you basically have to cut across open water to head back towards them. You can see what appear to be the site of 2 wrecked vessels, sort of listing in the water. They're crusted in barnacles and seaweed. They appear to have. You hear one of the crows and they shout up, "Looks like shallows and rocks. Couple of vessels wrecked on it." And you hear Cartwright saying, "Trim the sails slightly. We don't want to run aground on whatever rocks caught those poor devils." As the Spirit of Ambition moves past the 2 wrecked vessels, one of them is a galleon of Havenland design, bearing the fading markings of the Queen's Navy. The other is a vessel of unfamiliar design that appears to have the name El Destructor carved into the prow. Jackdaw speaks to First Mate Cartwright about the wreck, and the First Mate reveals that the strange vessel El Destructor appears to be of Espan origin, perhaps a galleon, he's not really sure. But Jackdaw is able to persuade the First Mate to lend both him and Big Mick one of the small 2-man rowing boats attached to the Spirit of Ambition, and the 2 of them row across to the wrecks whilst their larger vessel is having to move around the shallow rocky waters. You see that it appears to be sort of sitting at a 45-degree angle in the water, with the prow of the ship sticking out of the front. There is what appears to be a fanciful carving of some sort of strange sea beast, some sort of like Leviathan style beast as the figurehead, but a lot of it's been chipped or abraded away, presumably when it ran aground on the rocks. The wood is soaked with water and sort of obviously in quite poor condition. You see bits where like chunks of the wood have fallen away.
Yeah, it's warped all to hell, probably.
Indeed. Arriving at the stricken vessel, Jackdaw steps out of his clothes and prepares to enter the water.
I put all my clothes like at the front of the ship, boat, and I'll tell Mick to like get the other end of the rope. I'll leave the spool on the ship, and I'll go down with the other end.
Okay.
So if I tug on it 3 times, start hauling it up.
Right, you are.
Yeah.
No problem.
Diving below the water, Jackdaw explores the sodden and decaying Espan vessel. He's just getting to the point where he's reaching the limits of his lung capacity and he's going to have to turn around and head back up when he spots an open cabin with what appears to be a large barnacle-encrusted wooden chest in it. But not having much breath left, he has to swim back to the surface before he can investigate further. Mm-hmm. Mick, you've been sort of like feeding the rope out, sat on board this little rowing boat for a short while, when Jackdaw like bursts up out of the water, taking a deep breath as he does so.
Yeah, grab him up, fetch him up. Right there, Jackdaw. Oof. Left it a bit long there.
Yeah, it's... I don't know if there's anything there, but there is a cabin and there's... I think it's some kind of a chest. The door is, well, not functional anymore, so if I go down again, I'll head straight for the thing, and I'll get the chest, and then I'll tug on the rope, and you haul me up, and I'll just hold on to the chest, and you pull me up.
Right, you are? Yeah.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. So you're going to swim it down under the water.
Yep.
Straight to the chest.
Yeah, straight to the cabin. Grab the chest if it's movable, first of all. But if it is, I'll just cradle it, tug on the rope 3 times, and just wait for Big Mick to haul me up.
Okay, so just to let you know, for the purposes of game mechanics, you can hold your breath for a number of rounds equal to your total constitution score.
Oh shit! I suck at this.
Each additional round beyond that requires a successful constitution check that begins at difficulty 0. So just if constitution's not your primary, the basic 18, and then it goes up by 1 on each successive round.
Okay, yep. And if you fail, what happens?
Okay. If a character fails a constitution check before finding breathable air, he begins to drown and is reduced to -7 hit points, losing 1 hit point per round thereafter until he dies.
Well, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at that stuff. I used
Swimming?
to go swim. I used to go swimming in the river and that. And unlike when you went swimming in the river, I stayed quite healthy.
After some discussion, the two comrades decide to switch roles, and after giving Big Mick some directions of how to get to the chamber with the chest, Jackdaw takes up the rope. Big Mick leaps into the water and swims down quickly, making his way to the cabin that Jackdaw saw earlier. And you're now facing this sort of like door that's like hanging off by a hinge. It looks like it might have once been like maybe a captain's or a sort of a treasurer's cabin or something like that, but most of the stuff in here has been ruined by long exposure to water. But you can see this large barnacle encrusted chest sat in the centre of the room.
Okay, head on over and do what Jackdaw said. Tie the rope to a handle and give the rope. Once I've done that, give the rope 3 tugs for Jackdaw to start pulling on it.
Okay, make me a wisdom roll.
And I'll assist by pushing as well if I can. A wisdom roll.
20.
Oh,
Absolutely
shit.
grand wisdom master himself. Okay, so you head in, you've got the rope, you're heading over towards this chest. As you're heading towards it, you see what appear to be 6 like large dinner plates just sort of like piled up in the corner of the room, or like sort of bowls of some kind. However, as you're getting nearer to the chest, these bowls start moving, and you see they're actually the shells of large crabs.
Oh,
Like I say, 6 of them, and they appear to be sort of slowly scuttling towards you.
I beat a hasty retreat.
Okay, no problems. Make me a strength roll, see if you manage to get out before they get to you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to make a roll for them. Okay, you do not. One of them has got to you.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, it wouldn't be the first time that Fat Michael's got crabs. Nor the last.
No, I was going to say, probably not the last either. Okay. So one of these crabs like snaps its claw onto your leg. There's like a muffled, and you take 6 hit points of damage.
Yeah, that's not good.
Okay, you can see these other like 5 crabs are like moving towards you. They don't appear to be swimming, but they're scuttling over these ruined wooden deckings. Seemingly, obviously, they're adapted for the water, so they're having no problems.
With one of the giant crabs attached to his legs and desperate to get to the surface, Big Mick momentarily considers whether he should take the time to tie off the chest.
I'm going to get mullered by these crabs if I stay.
Thinking better of trying to retrieve the chest, Big Mick begins swimming frantically towards the surface, tugging on the rope as he does so. Between him swimming and Jackdaw pulling the rope, he's soon able to reach the surface.
As you pull Big Mick out of the water, Jackdaw, you see for a few moments this like big crab claw coming out of the water, attached to his leg, but obviously as he starts being pulled out of the water, the crab releases him and drops back into the water.
Mm-hmm.
And you see like quite a sort of deep wound on his leg.
What was that?
Bleeding hell's fire. This place is crawling with stinking crabs. They got me. I was going for the chest and all these crabs come out from nowhere, pinching and snapping at me, and they got me by the leg here. And
That was a giant crab.
I thought I was a goner. I'd never seen anything like it. Like dinner plates they were.
Okay, well, tell you
the
what,
feast.
we'll get back to the ship, come back later. Like, no one's going in there if the crabs were gonna make sausage out of you, so...
They quickly make their way back to the Spirit of Ambition and tell Cartwright what they saw. The rest of the day passes fairly uneventfully as the Spirit of Ambition tries its best to rejoin with the rest of the fleet.
On the 3rd day, the wind appears to have died down a great deal, However, the sun has come out. The storm appears to have largely passed, and you can see that you've gained some ground on the Brilliance and the Victory, who are now heading around the coast near Plymouth in the county of Devon, so it's sticking fairly close to the coast of the Havenlands, basically. Okay. However, during the day, as time passes, the wind begins to rise again. Waves many leagues high start to crash on board the deck. During the day, at least 8 men are lost overboard due to the waves crashing on the deck. Basically, everything that's on the decks has to be lashed down, and a number of men who are doing the lashing gets swept overboard.
And also probably because these guys were like peasants and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like they don't know how things work. So.
Okay, you can also see, you hear the voice up in the crow's nest say, "Looks like the Brilliance is in trouble." And as you look out, you can see that the Brilliance appears to be listing quite dangerously to a port side.
Can we see why? Maybe.
Okay, you can't really see why yourself. However, when you ask around, you've got a couple of people on board who are obviously actually sailors, and one of them says, "Wait, she's lying in the water. Maybe she's got a hole in the hull. Looks like she's taking on water. That's why a ship would be listing over like that. They must be trying to bail her out." Over the course of the day, you can see that the Brilliance appears to move further into the coast, and you hear someone on deck, Cartwright, saying, "Looks as though the Brilliance is trying to put into land. Maybe they might have to stop and make repairs."
Although a third of their fleet has had to put into land to make emergency repairs, the vital nature of the mission forces the rest of the fleet to sail onwards.
So that is a bit of a blow then.
As the Spirit of Ambition continues sailing, Captain Farrington puts in an appearance on deck, and Cartwright tries to explain to him the situation.
"Sir, it looks as though the Brilliance is making landfall." He's like, "God, more glory for the rest of us." It's like, imagine they'll be singing our names in the streets when we bring back the cure for this plague.
Eye roll in time.
Yeah, pretty much. As this is going on, like one of the sailors in the crowd, sort of in response to Captain Farrington's sort of speech, if you want to call it that, sort of shouts out, he's like, "We should make landfall as well, otherwise none of us will live to make it back to London."
Oh.
You hear Cartwright say, "Which of you men said that?" But like no one puts their hand up to like admit it. It's just like a voice shouting from in the crowd that's gathered.
So Cartwright is asking for who said the thing. Yeah. So, well, I'll go up to him like, "Do you really want to find out?"
It's like, well, we need to make sure this doesn't escalate any further. If any, and he lowers his voice barely above a whisper. He says, "If any of that damn fool Farrington had just stay in his cabin, we could get this over with."
Well, I'll hold up a knife and I'll shout at the folks. "Okay, well, I'll be taking an ear from everyone until someone says who said the thing that the first mate here wants to discuss in private." I'll just go up to the first guy and it's like,
he's like, "Whoa!"
Easy, Tiger.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, well, he's like, whoa.
A man suddenly, like bodily, like shoved out of the crowd, and sort of basically like skids on his arse at your feet, Jackdaw, and you hear a voice from in the crowd go, "Was him."
is our big friend then?
Yeah,
Yep.
you see Gregor stood in the crowd, and he's obviously just like pretty much grabbed this guy and like slung him out of the crowd.
I'll smile at the guy that I was gonna brutalize maybe, and like tap him on the shoulder. Good man, and I'll just point at the man that Gregor threw out of the crowd, and I'll motion to Cartwright, and I was like, "Please, the first mate would like to talk to you in private."
Cartwright looks at some of the others and he's like, "Get that man up against the yard arm. I'll have you flogged for this." And over the course of the next few minutes, this guy's basically like lashed to the mast. His jacket's ripped open on his back, and Cartwright, using basically like a cat o' nine tails, sort of administers a number of lashes to the back of this fellow, who then is pretty much carried below deck by some of the other sailors. He's like, "Put salt water on that wound and let him sleep it off for the rest of the day." So, and that's what's waiting for the rest of you if you get any thoughts of insubordination. We're only going to make it through this journey if we all pull together.
Turn to Jackdaw. Here, Jackdaw. I bet that weren't even the geezer who spoke out. I bet Gregor just shoved out a random fella out of the crowd. I mean, who's going to argue with him?
Yeah, I mean, nobody is, and it doesn't really matter.
With thoughts of mutiny quashed for the moment and the insurrection at least temporarily dealt with, the crew bend their backs to their labours and the rest of the day passes without incident. Your vessel now is moving around the southwesterly tip of the Havenlands, heading past the county of Devon. And you rolled a 9.
Yep.
Okay. The weather appears to have cleared. The wind is dropping slightly, which has slowed down the pace of your vessel. However, the slight warming of the weather in the sun has made it a lot easier for people to do their duties. And during the course of the day, though the men who were originally slain by the Sharkmen a few days earlier, they're bundled up in canvas sheets that are tied with rope, the sort of makeshift shrouds, and they're sort of balanced on the side of the ship. You see the first mate stands next to them, and he says, there's a couple of men like next to the bodies as well. He says, "Well, I'm not a great one for words, but these men gave their best while they were on board this vessel, and for that the gods will smile on them. We commit their bodies now to the deep in the hope that they find the rest they deserve in the life after this one." And he nods at the sailors that are sort of like balancing the bodies, and they're tipped over the side, and you see these canvas covered corpses plop into the water and start sinking. A few people like take off their hats and lower them to the chest and sort of like bow their heads a little bit. The makeshift funeral concluded, the ships continue their journey, sailing around the tip of Haven's End, when a cry goes up from the crow's nest that sails have been sighted. You look off the ship, you can see what appears to be like a sort of merchantman vessel, a square-sailed, three-mast vessel. It appears to be sailing around the coast. It looks to be of Havenland manufacture, like I say, probably a trading vessel of some sort, given its configuration. And it appears to be heading, presumably from somewhere near Haven's End, and heading sort of past you to Plymouth, which is here, which is known as a port, so it's not exactly surprising. As the vessel comes near you, you see someone sort of stood on the side of it, sort of like leaning out, holding on to a rope, and he shouts across her, "Ho there! Where are you bound for?" You hear Cartwright shout back saying, "We're bound for Emeraude." "What news from Haven's End?" He says, "Well, the weather's caused us some issues there. We were originally going to continue on around the coast to Weymouth, but
we're going to have to make port in Plymouth, make some repairs. The recent storm and all that, but hopefully we can do some trading there. Other than that, the journey's been uneventful. You hear someone shout back, and he says, "We wish you luck in your mission. We hope that you can. We've heard word about your brave mission, even as far down south as we are, and we hope you can find a cure for this dreadful plague." And you can see people on this vessel, so like a number of the sailors, like waving across at you guys from their ship as like they're passing fair within visual range. You hear a few of the sailors sort of cheering on the other vessel. It would appear that, as this guy said, the news of your expedition has spread beyond Great London.
Oh, Big Mick will do a big old wave back. Bit of a bow.
Absolutely fine. A little bit of a cheer goes up as you sort of step up and give him like a bit of a flourish and a bow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
As this little like interchange is taking place, what's Jackdaw up to?
Probably stalking someone that he thinks he heard talking mutiny.
Okay,
Just like standing like a bit too close behind someone in the sort of crowd who's like looking at this other passing vessel.
Okay, so as you're sort of like moving up behind this guy, you see he's like gathered with like a small group of like the other crewmen, and he's like, as you walk up, he's just sort of saying, "Yeah, well, look, all I'm saying is Cartwright obviously knows far more than." And then he sees you walking across, and he just goes quiet.
It's a fine day, isn't it? I say, in general, but really to him.
He says, "Yeah, well, it'd be better if we had a captain who knew what he was doing. Bloody taking us into Gaulish waters. What do you think he's playing at?"
Yeah, the thing with ships is the navigator figures out where we're going. And yeah, you're right about the captain, because a ship functions very much like a small army unit. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to an army, but the surest way to get everyone killed is to either have a bad commander or to undermine the commander in question. Now,
he looks at you and he says, "Look, all I'm saying, right, is that if something were to happen to the captain, then Cartwright would have to take over, right? He's the first mate."
that's how it works. Or yeah, it's probably Cartwright then.
He says, "Look, I'm not saying I want anything bad to happen to the captain. All I'm saying, because look, I want to get to look. I've got family and that back in London. All I'm saying is, I want us to get to Emeraude, find this cure, and get back as quick as possible. And I reckon we've got a better chance of doing that with Cartwright in charge. Look at him. Like he's the one like laying them people to rest, like right respectfully. He's the one who's actually running this ship anyway. All the captain's doing is getting in the way. Now, obviously Cartwright can't do anything about it himself. That wouldn't be right. But what I'm saying is, like, if the captain were to have an accident,
Right. The thing is, though, the captain, as you saw at the service, he didn't come out of his cabin. So that's where he spends his time.
that's what I'm talking about. Look,
You're not.
Couldn't he be able to come out of his cabin and like show his respect for these men who like died trying to like get this mission done?
Let's establish something. You don't like the captain, and you would like him to stay away. Correct?
All I'm saying is, I think we'd be better off with Cartwright in charge.
Yeah. Okay, so the captain is in the cabin. Do we agree? Most of the time.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. out of the way. Yeah?
Yeah.
Not interfering. So, the captain is an annoyance from a distance, not interfering with your business, because Cartwright runs the show as it is. The captain is harmless and confined within his cabin most of the time. Do we agree?
Well, yeah, I suppose so, if you put it like that.
So shut up, then!
As he's sort of like looking a bit crestfallen, one of the other sailors in like this group pipes up and he's like, I reckon we should have that big fella in charge. I saw him wrestling with that shark thing that came on board. I reckon he knows what he's about. Get that big fella in charge.
Okay, I don't know who you are, but you're dumb. So, and I turn back to the first guy. How about we stow the discontent, because the source of your annoyance self-confines himself. Purposefully out of your way. If you have difficulties with him not making an official appearance, and you can't get over that for long enough for us to go to Emeraude, get the cure, and come back home, you're the problem, not the captain.
Yeah, I suppose I can see. I suppose I can see your point. All right, we'll leave it.
Cartwright runs the show, so
Yeah,
let him
that's true.
run it. Let the captain stay in his quarters. Do whatever he does.
Yeah, you make a good point, I suppose. Oh, well, let's get back to it, lads. And they sort of get back to their normal tasks.
And I will shadow him going forward, because I need to make sure that he's not up to some shit.
Okay.
But yeah, so basically I'm doing my share of the duties on board, but my interest lies heavily in being the secret police, I guess.
With Jackdaw keeping a lid on any thoughts of rebellion, the merchantman moves past them and continues on its way. The rest of the day passes uneventfully, and after their shift is finished, the two comrades head below deck to get some much needed sleep.
You're awakened from your slumber. You've all got one hit point back. You seem to be fairly on course. You're sort of heading around towards Haven's End when you hear like quite a lot of commotion and like shouting up on deck, like raised voices.
If we're both in the cabin, as I think we might be because we run the same shifts. So I'll rustle up Mick and.
What sort of row? What sort of ruckus?
It better not be them lynching the captain.
Okay,
No.
you head up on deck and you see that a thick, heavy, sort of greenish fog has fallen over the waters. The commotion on deck seems to be because you've lost the Victory. It's nowhere to be seen. You can just
It's
about
the green gloom. The green gloom has descended upon
Indeed. A thick, heavy midder fog has descended
us. A midder fog.
on the seas. It makes it very difficult to know. You can just about see the dark shape of the coast that you're following along. You can hear a lot of the sailors sort of shouting like, "Oh, what are we going to do now? We've lost the Victory. The Queen's own flagship." Then you hear another shout, "Man in the water! Man in the water!" And you see like people grabbing ropes and like running to the side of the ship.
Yeah, I'll go and assist.
Okay, you grab some ropes yourself, you run over. You can see what appears to be a few like sort of broken like planks of wood sort of on the surface of the water, and there's a man who appears to be like floating face down in the water amongst it.
Is he looking a bad way? Yeah. All right. I'll tie the rope around myself, get a couple of lightly looking lads, or if Gregor's about.
Yeah, Gregor's about.
Hey, Gregor, lower me down, old fella. And I'll point and
He looks at you and he's like, "What?"
Put me down, and I like hold the rope and show him, like shove the rope in his hands, like hold the rope.
He nods and he sort of like he wraps this rope around his arm and sort of like behind his waist and holds onto it, and you tie the end around yourself.
Yeah.
You see him sort of he leans back and like braces his feet against the side of the boat.
Yeah, I'm gonna go down there and see if I can fish up this guy.
Okay, you head down. You head out. You sort of grab this guy. You pull him over to you. You see that he appears to be still alive, albeit barely, but he's unconscious. He's wearing like typical sort of commoner's garb. He's obviously not been in the water for a long amount of time because he's still alive.
Yep. I'll get him over my shoulder, sort of thing. And balance him on my shoulder and tug on the rope and call up to heave us up, heave me up, Gregor.
What?
If he appears like
Yeah, you
at
see
the
his
side
head
or
like,
anything,
look over.
I'll wave at him and like pull the rope up, and I'll be pointing up, pull us up.
He's like, "Da," and he quickly like heaves you up, holding on to this person, and like pulls you over the side. And he sort of grabs you with like one of his arms and like heaves you the rest of the way when you get near enough, and like plonks you.
Yeah, I just pat him on the shoulder, sort of thing, and grin and lay this guy out. Start trying to tip out his lungs or whatever, and I'm no first aider. Look around for someone who knows what they're doing.
Okay, roll me a d6.
Okay. Oh.
Okay, that is absolutely fine. You sort of like you press on this guy's chest, and after a few moments, he sort of like and coughs up a load of water, and you see his eyes sort of slowly like fluttering open. You hear Cartwright from behind you has been like pushing his way to the front of this crowd that's like gathered around you, and he says, "That's Willie Grimes. He's the first mate on the Victory."
No. Well, that don't bode well, does it? I've just fetched him out of the drink.
He looks over the side and he says, "That wreckage doesn't bode well either." And he like points at all the bits of wood floating in the water.
Sure. No, you don't mean... surely not.
He looks over and he's like, "Willie, what happened? We couldn't see anything when this damn fog came down. Where's the Victory?" And he looks at you and he's like, he raises a hand up and he's like, "Cartwright, something came out of the water, smashed its way through the side of the boat. I was pitched overboard. I didn't even really see what it was. And then I just heard the sound of splintering timbers, and then I was in the drink." And he coughs again, and like a bit more water comes out.
Bleeding hell. Well, Mr. Cartwright, I don't like the sound of that. Smashed up the boat. I mean, it was a big old boat, wasn't it? Must have been a right beast of a thing.
He says, "Yes, and whatever smashed up the Victory, assuming that Willie's not just out of his mind with the cold, it must have done it quickly, or we'd have heard it. It must have put a hole right through it, and most of it must have just gone down. Otherwise, we'd have heard it breaking apart."
Could it have just run onto some rocks and he's imagined it all?
I suppose it's possible, but I've sailed with the navigator of the Victory before, and this is a well-known route. We're still within sight of the coast. I suppose it's possible, given the pea soup that's out there, but I find it hard to imagine. You hear a door
Should we-
open and a voice goes, "Now then, men, what's all this
no.
ruckus about out here?" And you see Captain Farrington like sashaying his way onto the deck.
Oh no!
Cartwright turns to him. You see like his shoulders like sag as he like, turns around to talk to him, and he's like, "Oh, Captain, sir, we've got an unconfirmed report that the Victory's been holed and may have sunk." He's like, "Hold? Well, what on earth could, in these waters, these coastal waters, could have sunk the Queen's flagship? It's a sterling vessel of war." "Well, I don't know, sir, but we fished the first mate of the Victory out of the water, and he like, thanks to these men," and he gestures at you. He says some sort of creature attacked their vessel, but he's half out of his mind. He's been in the freezing cold for Gale only knows how long. I don't know how reliable his story is, sir, but I can't imagine that he'd have jumped overboard himself. Well, no, of course not, Cartwright. That's simply preposterous. But a creature that could sink the Queen's flagship this close to the shore, maybe in the deep sea, but surely not here. And this sort of conversation's like continuing along in the same vein, with Cartwright basically trying to get across the idea that we don't know that it's sunk, but it might have done. We need to be wary. And the captain's just like, no. What are you guys doing while this is going on? You muted, Mick.
Mr. Cartwright, could we put out a boat to see if we can fish out any more survivors? Like a mercy mission.
Yes, of course. You there, men. He points like at half a dozen of the men. Get to the rowboat, see if there are any more survivors. And see if you can find out, get a closer look at this wreckage, find out what's going on. And you see like a half a dozen of the men sort of getting into the rowboat and it being lowered down into the water. And they start rowing off a short distance into the fog, but obviously staying within sight of the Spirit of Ambition. So what are you guys up to?
What'd you make of that then, Jackdaw?
Well, I don't know. But I guess we'll find out soon enough, because that's where we're going.
You think it's a monster?
It could very well be. Maybe it's more sharkmen. Who knows? Maybe they have a shark ship.
It seems a bit far-fetched. Mind you, shark men seem a bit far-fetched also.
There's probably all kinds of things in the water.
Do they have whales and that round these parts? Do they come in so close or not so much?
One of the sailors says, "Yes, we get whales around these parts. Some of them are fairly big."
My old man always used to say there's good money in whaling, but he never had the sea legs for it.
As you're saying this, there's a loud shudder as something below the waterline impacts with the side of your boat. The boat deck, which is level, sort of goes, and
Whoops.
loads of stuff like slides down the deck as the ship lists alarmingly to one side. Jackdaw is sort of looking over the side. You can just about make out like a dark shape in the water, sort of quite a massive shape, and it appears to have like rammed the side of the boat, although it doesn't look to have like holed it.
I'll because we have someone in the crow's nest probably, right?
Yeah.
So I'll.
In fact, make me a D6 roll.
Okay.
He's about to get pitched out of the crow's nest.
Oh, one.
You hear a sort of Wilhelm-esque like "Ah!" as this guy like as the ship and the mast sort of goes like that. This guy's
he gets
out of the crow's
catapulted.
nest. Yeah, and then there's a loud.
Right. Okay. So I was gonna do something. So I turned towards the crow's nest and
Man
Well,
overboard!
yeah. Forget about the man. There's a creature down there. I'll yell and like attract attention to the shape in the water.
Everyone's on deck sort of runs across to the side that you're looking down. You can see this large, this huge dark shape under the water. It appears to have sort of circled round the vessel, and it's now sort of like circling back round again, perhaps getting ready to like ram into the vessel again.
Do we have any idea what it looks like, John? Does it look like anything we've seen before?
It just looks like, because it's so deep underwater at the minute, it looks like just like a large dark mass.
Oh, right. Is it kind of wiggly, or like you say, just solid?
It's vaguely in a sort of like an aquatic shape, in the shape of like a fish, but it's like absolutely huge. I mean, it's like bigger than a whale.
Right. Oh, blimey.
And it's moving quite fast despite its size.
Well, yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Get one of the salted meats. Throw it at it. Maybe it's wants food.
I'll help you with that.
Yeah. So like a container of like whatever the salted meats are held in, just like lob that at the thing.
You hurl a load of these salted meats over the side, and for a few moments you see the shape move towards this container of salted meats, and briefly a part of it breaks the surface, and you see sort of silvered scales like those of a fish, but they're obviously orders of magnitude larger.
Are we? I forget if we talked about this. Is there enough gunpowder technology for us to have cannons on the ship?
You do have cannons. You have 3 on each side of the vessel.
Right. So I'll be, after we chuck the meat, I'll be going to Cartwright and be like, is there anyone at the cannon? Should we shoot?
He says it'll take us a while. We'll have to put fresh dry powder in, but and he gestures to the men. He's like, "Man the cannons!" And you see like people running around, start loading the cannons.
Yeah.
Now, as the cannons are being loaded, are you? Because obviously it's like all hands on deck, and you guys are hands. Are you guys going to like jump on any of the cannons yourself?
I guess I could.
Because this thing's circling effectively, like you can fire all 6 of the cannons at it as it's circling around.
Yeah, I guess I'm down there, not particularly maybe lugging any cannonballs because I'm not that strong, but I can try and coordinate and fire.
Okay, that's fine. So make an attack roll.
So an attack roll for me. Well, I'll put down a cannon on my thing here, and I'll shoot with that. 12.
Okay, you fire the cannon. Your shot doesn't hit it. However, 2 of the other cannons that are fired by the sailors on board appear to strike this thing, and it briefly breaks the water, and you can see this huge silver fish, sort of like bigger than your vessel, sort of like briefly like bursts out of the water. You see a couple of the cannonballs hit it, and then it like disappears under the water. You hear one of the sailors on board shout, "It's a Leviathan!"
Oh dear.
I guess under the deck with the guns, we'll just fire at will. We're just firing at it.
Okay, yeah, more cannon shots are fired. Some of them hit, most of them don't. This thing's moving quite quickly. Mm-hmm. However, the shots that have it appear to be enough to deter it. And after a short moment, you see this dark shape like moving away under the water, perhaps going in search of an easier meal.
Jeez.
Yeah. Well, I appear smelling of gunpowder and smoke. Did you see that, Mick?
I'm afraid I did. That was a big Big old fish.
That was a manor house except the fish.
Yeah. No one back home would believe it if I told this tale.
With the danger past, the crew of the Spirit of Ambition conduct makeshift repairs, and Cartwright decides that they must push on and try and find the cure, despite the fact that they seem to be the only ship of the fleet remaining.
The further we can get away from that thing, the better, to my mind.
The Spirit of Ambition continues to make good speed, sailing up the western coast of the Havenlands.
Ooh, is there... Because we discussed the effects of the previous games in the same setting, and Porthcrawl encountered a drastic fate, to say the least. So, is there anything as far as like the House Nest folks or anyone with the spyglass?
Yeah,
how's the coastline?
There's a few spyglasses about, and in fact, as you're sort of passing this area here, as you're sort of looking across, you can see sort of roundabout here is what appears to be, it's almost as though a huge chunk of the coast has been sort of blasted away. There's like this huge crater in the ground, and I'll just quickly use the freehand drawing tool to draw that. So this sort of crater's like here.
Mm-hmm.
You borrow a spyglass off someone. You look across. You can see that one of the other sailors says, "Oh yes, I've heard. I've heard some nasty rumours about what went on in this area." He says some sort of explosion years ago, from what I understand. That he sort of like points across the way. You can just about make out this crater with a naked eye, and he says, "Yeah, there used to be a village of some sort there. Godless folks, apparently, from what I heard, dabbled in all sorts of forbidden lore, and from what I hear, apparently the gods smote them down for their blasphemy."
To be honest, it looks like they were sitting on a pile of gunpowder, though. And that's, well, if you're... I don't know about the gods and the smiting, but if they had that much powder stored there, they were probably asking for it.
He nods and says, true.
Huh.
He says, yes, he says, I seem to remember there was some effort by the noble houses, something about clearing away forests in the southwest, a little bit before my time, but
Hey, Mick.
Yeah.
When we get the time, we should perhaps travel around a bit. Seen a great deal of Great London, but turns out there's a whole country out here.
Well, it's a lot bigger than I thought it would be, I must confess.
It doesn't look that big on the map.
Doesn't look that big on a map. No, it's massive.
One of the sailors is like, well, yeah, he says, problem with a lot of their map makers is a lot of them rely on like tall tales off people, you know. A lot of them ain't ever been out here. They just draw what they've been told. Like, the ship continues to move along the coast, heading north. You then head west across the Emeraude Sea past Twain Island. You hear from the new Crow's Nest crew member, who looks a little bit nervous about going up in the Crow's Nest after the fate of the last poor unfortunate fellow. He shouts down and he says, I can see the coast of Emeraude in sight. And as you sort of look across the west, you can see the lush greenery of the coast of Emeraude. Very good, says Cartwright. We'll continue north across the Emerald Sea. We're to make landfall in Brackenwold.
Do people not normally come here, John, to Emeraude?
There's all sorts of strange rumours about Emeraude. Now, technically, Emeraude it sort of owes fealty to the throne of Havenland, but in reality, as long as the tributes keep coming from Emeraude, the Queen Elspeth just sort of leaves it alone to do its own thing. There is a duke who rules from Brackenwold, and he's technically a subject of the Havenland throne, but as long as they're sort of not causing trouble and they keep paying their taxes, they're pretty much left to their own devices. But there's all sorts of odd rumours about, because most of Emeraude is covered in a thick sort of deep forest. There's lots of odd rumours about sort of strange folk who live in the forest. The influence of the Church of Gale never really spread quite as thoroughly in Emeraude as it did in the rest of the Havenlands. So although it's technically still a sort of Gaelite place, there's a lot more remnants of the old faith over here. You'll have heard Friar Dunstan say that back in the day, a group of a sort of splinter faction of the Church of Gale headed over to Emeraude, and they're a slightly more sort of like militant version of the church as it was back then, but they've diverged a bit from the main church. Obviously they've been separated for so long.
All right.
But actual reliable news from Emeraude is in fairly short supply.
Okay.
Okay, the rest of the day passes uneventfully. However, while you're sleeping, Mick, you once more find yourself dreaming. And in this dream, you find yourself stood in front of what appears to be a large earthen mound with an open stone door. In the dream, almost though compelled, you head into this sort of burial mound, and you make your way through these twisting earthen passageways until you find yourself in a large room with a stone coffin in the centre of it. You open up the coffin and you see a skeleton lying inside it, wearing plate armour, a sword next to it, its arms crossed across its chest, and on its finger is a golden ring.
And presumably this golden ring resembles the ring in my previous dream.
Indeed it does.
I wonder why I'm getting these dreams.
Indeed.
Has anything happened to me that could account for this? I don't think I recall anything.
Not as far as you're aware.
Where?
However, there's something oddly familiar about this place, although you've obviously never been here before. And something about the strange, odd qualities of your recent dreams does seem a little bit familiar. As you're thinking about this and you're sort of wandering around this dreamscape almost in a daze, you see sort of at the foot of the stone coffin is carved the name Sir Chide.
A strangely familiar name. I cannot think what may have caused this familiarity. It's almost as though an alter ego of mine has journeyed here in another life.
Indeed. And who's to say? Okay, so whilst you're having your dream, Mick, Jackdaw, you're sort of mingling with the rest of the crew, you know, sort of doing a few bits and pieces here and there. You hear a few of the sailors talking. They sort of gathered together. The people below decks, some of them are struggling to sleep a little bit, you know, the sort of the rolling of the vessel, etc. And as is often the case with people at sea, the the subject of like tall tales comes on. People are telling like stories, anything to pass the time and sort of remind them of home and stuff like that. And obviously there's a lot of speculation about Emeraude itself occurring. As you sort of wander over there, just probably getting rid of some like the scraps from your scrimshaw and stuff like that. You hear a sailor talking, and he says, yes, and they say that Brigford the Wise's tomb was lost somewhere in Emeraude when the church were pushed back by those pagan devils on the island.
How do you lose a tomb?
He says, well, I don't know, but that's what they say. They said he was buried with his fabled sword and his magic ring, but like when the church got pushed back by those pagan devils, they had to abandon the tomb.
So it would have been in a church then? The original tomb?
He says, yeah. If I recall the story correct, there was like an abbey or something of the like. Maybe an intelligence check, Jack Dollar.
Mm-hmm. Come on, just one success. Well,
boom. Praise Gale. Okay.
Yeah, praise Gale. Praise Gale.
As someone saying the name Brigford the Wise, you're like, I'm sure I know that name from somewhere. Then as they carry on talking, they mention it a few more times. It occurs to you where you've seen it before. You've seen it on the genealogy document that you copied down from the library.
Ah.
Library.
Do I remember enough to figure out why? Like, what's the significance? Like, where does he fall?
Well, you know that the genealogy document, if it's to be believed, was tracing the sort of Oculon line and the various branches, which apparently includes yourself. You seem to remember that Brigford the Wise and his brother Sir Chide were one of the offshoots of that original family line. So effectively, like, distant cousins to you, if you believe the genealogy document.
Yeah. Where did you say this was again? Up in sorry, I'm looking at the map. Up in Brackenwold.
He says, well, Brackenwold. The sailor says, well, Brackenwold's the only actual civilized part of Emeraude. Once you push in past that, it's all what they call the Dolmen Wood over there. A horrible place full of like pagan devils and devil worshippers. Well, the church has made no end of efforts to clear it out, but well, obviously they haven't been successful, have they?
Yeah. Well, I suppose we'll be heading that way ourselves, looking for the cure.
Okay.
I will make a note, and I will mention it to Mick that there is probably a lost either church or abbey or other.
Well, you wait until Mick wakes up the next morning and feel free to have that conversation.
Oh yeah. As I'm handing him out the morning provisions, whatever that might be, like maggoty bread.
Yeah, maggoty bread for 3 sticky days.
Yeah, and some water. So, so I was talking with some of the folks, and apparently we'll be, as has been mentioned before, we'll be landing somewhere in the Brackenwold part, I think, of Emeraude. And there's a distant cousin of the Oculon line. And I give him the office that, that at some point came over here these distant cousins arrived in Emeraude. Apparently, they established some of the presence here, and at least one of them was buried in it was an abbey, maybe it was a church. The tomb was there, is the important thing. They were buried somewhere there, where apparently the locals pushed the church out. So I presume the church in this instance also kind of means the crown. So a ruined church somewhere outside of primary crown-controlled areas. There's probably an Oculon tomb there, and fitting treasures to boot.
Well, it's funny you mentioned tombs, because I had another one of them rarefied dreams, and that was all about a tomb with some Sir Chide in his...
Yeah, that'll be the other one, the other Oculon.
Sir Chide?
Yeah.
Oh.
His brother came over as well. What was it, John? The Wise?
Yeah, his brother was called Brigford the Wise.
Brigford the Wise is the fella who got buried. Chide, the other one.
Well, in this dream there was a mound. I went in through the doorway, and inside there was a chamber, and I imagine Sir Chide was the fella laying in it with his armour and his thing, but he had the ring that I dreamt I was supposed to find for my old sweetheart. Sir Chide's got me ring.
Well, apparently Sir Chide's fairly from a very blue stock, if you catch my meaning. And
oh yeah, I'll catch it.
We well then, if you're having dreams from your sweetheart from the beyond, much like the lieutenant over there, and I share blood with these folks, these long dead folks, I presume. We might take a look.
The ship sails onwards towards the coast of Emeraude.
Decks, you hear a person shouting, "Lando!"
Thank Gale for that.
And as you head out onto the deck, you can see that the Spirit of Ambition appears to be heading for a small inlet on the island of Emeraude. There is what looks to be a small town, which the sailors around here inform you is the town of Belthorpe, and sitting in the centre of it is a large keep or castle built of imposing dark stone, and that's quickly identified as Castle Brackenwald, where the Duke of Brackenwald rules from. And a couple of people like nudging each other, sort of saying that like, you get the idea that this castle's like rumoured to be impregnable, and it sort of sits directly on the cliff side. One of the walls, you'd have to literally scale a sheer cliff to like get to that side of the castle, and obviously the town's around it on the other side. You hear?
Is it?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, is it a sinister looking sort of place, or not so much?
It does have a little bit of a sinister aspect to it. Like I say, it's built of like dark stone, and it rises up into the sky quite a distance above the rest of the sort of buildings, like the sort of small town that's grown up around it. And it does appear to be quite a forbidding looking place.
Mm. Does it display any like heraldry and flags and stuff?
You can see what appears to be as you get closer and you're heading into this inlet, you can see what appears to be a large black sort of pendant or sort of banner hanging from one side of the castle, and it appears to have a silver sword on it.
Mm.
As you pull into this sheltered harbour, you hear Cartwright saying, get ready to make landfall. Prepare to drop the anchor. You can see like a few sort of local fishing boats and whatnot in this sheltered inlet as the Spirit of Ambition pulls into shore, lowers the anchor and begins putting the gangplanks down. Congratulations, you have reached the misty Isle of Emeraude, and that is where we're going to end the session for this evening, fellas. Thank you very much for playing. You have survived the perilous journey across the Emerald Sea, menaced by shark men, leviathans, vaguely mutinous crew, and probably the most incompetent captain this side of the Emeraude Isle. So thank you very much for playing, guys. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed running it.
Yep.
Yeah, cheers, John.
Yeah, that was fun. And we still have a ship that floats,
Exactly.
so it's a win.
Exactly. All you've got to do is make it back now. Find a cure and make it back. Easy.
Yep.
Easy.
Yeah, we'll do that like easy peasy. 2 rolls.
Indeed.
One to
That's
find
what
the cure.
could go
second
wrong.
Back.
Well, that's it. You've got Jackdaw with his bearded axe. What could go wrong, man? Okay, so thank you very much, guys. Obviously, I'll work out the XP for this session and let you know about that. And obviously, I'm always happy to chat, as always. But for now, I'm going to end the stream. So thank you to anyone who's watching this either now or in the future. Hopefully, we'll catch you next time. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.